gray, spitting. I came through the notch, I was like, what? It's been sunny in the valley? I would have planned differently. It's like 30, 40 degrees, and just spitting up.
All right, so we still haven't moved the minutes.
Yeah.
No, so if there is a motion,
Yeah,
Just
somebody
let's
else
get
put
this
that
thing
in here.
up there.
okay, motion to accept the minutes as noted with the adding Eastern Green to the Jackson Falls section.
Second that, is that right?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We do not have anything for Prospect Farm. It was extremely, I'm never up there midday, and I was able to see the kind of insanity that's up there
oh, yeah.
I've had
on Friday.
random people comment about it, that they couldn't believe what it was like up there.
On
The
Friday,
skiing was really good, but it was really, really busy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
on Prospect on Friday
Yes.
night.
yeah.
Just
I mean, the
Friday.
snow base is
Friday.
so much better up there.
I was up there Thursday, like right at dusk, so like 4:30 to like 5:30, and the parking lot was still mostly full.
Yeah.
Mm.
So like, whereas before you put on a headlamp and kind of have it to yourself, and
Well,
there's multiple people putting on headlamps and
Yeah,
going
I
on
did
it. So,
a late evening, and there's only 2 cars, and in the early morning, there's 3 cars, but regardless, I've heard that it's been full from the get-go,
Yeah.
and full into the evening, and lots of people turning around and
Mm.
just deciding not to do it, but I think part of it's just that the section where you're trying to drive past each other is the issue, but
yeah, and it's the only, it's the
Yeah.
only thing going.
it's like if Wildcat was the only ski mountain in New Hampshire, it's gonna be chaotic.
Yeah,
I did note that there were Jackson Ski Touring volunteers that are sort of directing traffic. And I don't know if they were doing that just because they happened to be standing in the parking lot, or if they're going to have someone there on busy weekends to help people not park like idiots.
Well, I think, yeah, what happens is if you don't know that it's going to be full, you drive in, and there's 4 cars, and then cars can't get out, and it's just
Yeah.
that short section,
because you have to make the decision right when you get to the overflow parking.
correct?
Yes, so I think, I was gonna ask Ken this, but if they were going to have someone there to kind of facilitate that, and looking forward at the success of that, and also, I know that the Granite Backcountry Alliance has kind of parking lot ambassadors that they're having at Maple Villa.
Yeah.
And depending on how successful that is, that may be a good thing to incorporate into thinking going forward into the Dundee Community Forest parking areas, of ways of saying, oh, we recognize the impact that parking has on trailheads, and we have a good stewardship program in place of trying to minimize that, so.
Yeah, I noticed that the proposed trails that they've got coming into Tin Mountain, they have the parking over at the Doublehead parking. And I was thinking, isn't that always full? But that's where the trails are starting from.
No, it's not always.
No.
There's some I thought they
Rarely, I think, on the big weekends,
Yeah.
Okay, at certain
but
times. Okay.
usually, there's cars in there, but
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's rarely full. If it was a really good, if we got a 6 or 8 inch powder storm, you might find that it fills up, but
Or are you talking about in the summer? Because in the summer, on a weekend, the Doublehead lot is often full.
yeah. On a weekend, I guess you could say it's.
Yeah.
I've never seen it really be overflowingly full, like to the point that you're like, huh, it's overflowing.
So remember,
Well,
we talked
usually
about that a
they'll-
while ago.
just go back to parking on the road.
Yeah.
But I know we're rarely
I
see
thought that's
it.
the problem that it had, but.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think it could take an additional 7 cars on an average hiking day. Maybe it could take 3. 3.
Mm.
What do you think you can park there, like without having to be parallel to the driveway, probably about 10, 12, before you're starting to get,
Yeah, 12 at the most.
yeah, that's not a lot.
Yeah, so that's also something to keep in mind because I guess we can get to that.
Mm.
That was kind of discussed. So I don't have anything else for Prospect Farm. Jackson Falls, we received an email from Chief Purley that the handicap bathroom parking sign needs to have the international handicap insignia or something there. And I'm fairly certain I saw one of those in the garage, the Gray's Inn garage, last time I was in there.
Who would have thought?
There's a pile of signs there. It's
Right.
kind of a hodgepodge in
It's
there.
not gonna be pretty though, is it?
But, if, for them to enforce the parking there, it needs to have that there, so. I don't think that's a high priority at the moment, but,
That's good to know.
yeah. So
And we did decide that we would just take the, is it 2-hour parking signs off of the steel and mount them onto the wooden fence? Or I thought that was a discussion.
we
just to kind of
definitely discussed
Clean it
that.
up.
I
Yeah.
think it's a good idea, but I don't know that we voted on that. Yeah.
I think
We discussed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
I might have
it's-
talked it over with Gary, and that might have been where
It
when he
makes
and I
sense
talked
though,
about it,
because you don't have to worry about
Just-
posts.
about some other kind of ways to simplify things and make it look nice.
So you're not.
Yeah, well, at least it'd be coplanar
Mhm.
with that.
Right.
Did you, Pam, have a chance to look at planting before things, I guess, looking good going, I guess you wouldn't know, but.
Yeah, no, it's
Nothing's
pretty
washed
much,
out yet, or-
yeah, I think it looked pretty much the way that you left it.
Okay.
We haven't looked after today's, last night's rain, I guess I should go check that out, because the falls were obviously flood, over the top. Whenever it's over that top rock, when you go over the Green Bridge, it's really high water. Yeah, I'll have to go take a look. But at least I know that our firm guy got paid, so it just takes a while for that to win through the process.
Yes, and Gary's invoice went through and was paid for the $2,500 that he quoted for doing that work, so. And also, it was not, I guess, I was not aware of this, but Rick Davis is under contract with the town to do the mowing there.
No,
Well, I guess I'm saying he is, that he sent an invoice to the town that came to us. I was not aware of that, but then I was informed that that's through the town's budget that they contract. So we're not responsible for paying that.
So you
For
just
the
pass the
mowing
word back.
But at Prospect.
At Prospect.
Yeah.
That gets-
right, it's just to give him the heads up that
Mhm.
we want him to
Yeah.
do that.
So
Yeah.
we don't technically pay out of our
Correct.
fund.
Yeah, that comes from, I don't know what pile that it comes out of, but the selectmen have contracted him to do that. So, and I haven't, I guess there wasn't enough snow to see on if impacting visibility for any of the signs, or if there was any plow damage or.
No, I didn't see anything. I may have looked, but it doesn't, not yet.
That all looks good.
It looks good. It's nice.
Yeah, went by this morning, everything's still upright, looks good.
Even though the signs aren't bright, they
It's
jump
the
out
nice
at
cedar
you.
posts.
Yeah,
Those make a big
you look at
difference.
them and
Yeah.
you actually read them instead of look away.
I don't think we'll know until we start getting later in the season, they start pushing the banks back and pushing it back. It's not gonna be probably till then that it would really see if there's gonna be any damage.
Just need an ambassador. Stand up there.
chain myself to one of those signs,
Exactly, I was hoping you'd say
taking my
that.
stand.
Just need a little force there.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good retirement plan. Any other,
If we had Ed Doobie, all the signs would be
Be
down first storm.
And there'd be a ditch,
Right. A big deep one.
Personal best, right?
doobie ditch.
Yeah.
It's a good memory.
when was that?
Well,
Oh, that was, what, 10, 15 years ago, even? We wouldn't be having these conversations. It'd be different.
He was tough on anything, mailboxes and signs, particularly.
They like the grader.
I was always intrigued with this, because when I lived in Alaska, they had very strict standards on how you could build your mailbox. And it was, you know, it had to be out on an arm, like the anchor is very far back, so it definitely could not get hit by a plow unless the plow was plowing extremely high. I was always shocked when I saw that here, I was like, they plow here, like,
Yeah,
But there are very few mailboxes.
well, the rural route is tiny,
you know. Yeah, okay.
few targets.
Let me hop over into the Gray's Inn garage this evening to get a sign, but nothing's come up for Gray's Inn. Great, still not there.
Still not there.
Dick, did you go to the fire station meeting? Did they discuss it? Okay. I read the minutes of it. It didn't seem like they got into anything very deeply about if they were leaning one way or another about how they were going to use that.
It's still like in motion.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I'm not going to worry about it. Community garden.
I'm just getting into renewal stage.
Okay. Is that when do you, like, first of the year or?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe by February 1st or something like that.
Okay. Do you want, or do you have enough spaces that you want to call up, advertise more, or you kind of?
I guess we'll see how it renews.
Okay.
So far, I haven't heard anybody who doesn't want to. So.
Okay. Spicy. Wildcat River, there is a new VRAP coordinator who's sent out, so there will be a program next year.
Awesome.
And they will be
That'd be great.
sending out equipment, so I think in the next few months, putting together a plan of where we want to start doing our testing, our main areas where we want to test, and getting some volunteers ready to do that for the period between May and September, which is their testing period.
So how do you want to solicit volunteers?
I guess it depends on how many sites that we want to do, and I mean, if they recommend having 2 people at each site to do the testing, and
In case one falls in, the other one can go get
I think there's some calibrating and just like hauling of buckets, and that's just their recommendation. And not having done it, I don't know if it makes sense, or it's better with 2, but if we have 10 sites, which I think was kind of where we were at the last time that they did it, that there was 10 separate sites that they had, and how we would like to split those up among people, or
Is it, and they need to be monitored once a month, is that right, for that time period? Or is it just,
I believe it's at least once a month.
At least once a month. So that's a lot. So I don't know what's in the like river corridor management plan, but that seems like a lot. And that's 20 people at least once a month for several months.
Unless you have people doing multiple sites.
Yeah.
Teams.
Yeah, I would think a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Like if we have to have 10 sites or not. That just seems like a lot. During the period of time a lot of people are gone, you know, like a lot of people aren't necessarily here. I don't know. I don't know if it's like, oh, we're mandated to do these all 10 of these sites or.
No.
I would probably bring that number down.
And that was his suggestion, and he said that was a lot.
Yeah.
And to have, especially in our first year when we're doing it, and it's all just adding baseline data. So I think if we can focus on the main Wildcat Brook corridor, that should be the main objective, and then thinking about going off onto Gray Brook or some of the larger tributaries there. But, I mean, would 4 sites feel more manageable?
I think it would be.
Okay.
You know, and as long as we have them spread out, so there's some lower, mid-river, lower river near the mouth, upper elevation ones. I think 4 sounds way more manageable, because then there's 8 people.
And the whole thing was getting it to the Granite State Analytical site before Friday or something like that.
Yes.
Oh,
And the
that's
only
right.
one that was time sensitive, which had a very short time window, was the fecal bacteria, which we can run here. We don't have to take that to Concord. So if we,
Oh yeah, they can take it to the place in Conway, right?
yeah, because they don't do
Yeah.
that test. That would be something additional that we would be paying for. So.
So it makes sense to me that we would either put a call out and then have like a day, like a half day training session kind of thing. Or we do some kind of like thing at the Whitney Center where we're like interested in being,
Yeah.
volunteer, come at 7 o'clock on this Thursday and learn how you can help protect.
Be a monitor.
Yeah, be a monitor.
Okay.
So like that's kind of the two. That's how I'd see it. It's either like a call out that way, or you have like a come listen and learn.
Preserve your local.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd probably be more likely to get more people if you did like a 7 o'clock at the Whitney Center. It's an hour, whatever, an hour long, and learn about how to do this, and then there's a training day thing after that.
Okay. I can ask Greg or I can look at what their schedule
Get a
is.
sign up sheet, yeah.
And do that.
That's all right.
And if we struggle with getting volunteers, we could always talk to some place like Green Mountain Conservation Group or somewhere that does a lot of water quality monitoring with a lot of volunteers.
What do you
And
think?
what do they do?
Yeah, like what do they do to like?
Pizza.
Yeah, right. Feed them.
Green Mountain.
Green Mountain Conservation Group, so they do the Ospey aquifer watershed, and so they do a lot of water quality testing, and they've got a lot of volunteers that do that. So I mean, that just kind of maybe is a resource if we like try and do, if we have our night, no one shows up to it, can't get any volunteers, what can we do?
Okay. Okay, that's good. Good movement on that. Anything else?
On the water.
Conservation easements, just if you haven't, submit reports. If you have any questions on that, let me know. It's fairly straightforward. And I think on some of them with the contact information that we have, that we need to update that with SPNF, so when you're filing the report, it has an updated contact. But that's one of the fields to input, so just as long as we get that. Wetlands, we just received correspondence from North Country Soil Services regarding
Greg Howard.
Yes. That's the.
Oh, I see,
That's
it's
the
like
person who
that's the
wrote the-
wrong name, that's
who
the
wrote
above it.
letter, Yeah.
Regarding the Meredith Foley parcel on Maloon that we reviewed, and DES had a request for more information, and they have modified, they have changed their proposal.
But simply just, well, they narrowed it.
They narrowed the footprint.
And they contacted the,
The width of the driveway across the street, it's been reduced to 14 feet. The width of the driveway is now 14 feet.
What was it before?
Yeah, there's a referred square footage impact, so it went from 800 down to 550 square feet.
and they notified the abutter, giving permission to the fact that,
It also puts the exit of the culvert further into the property line, so instead of ending the culvert at the property line, so. I don't know if we had anything to do with that, but.
I think that just by questioning it, something got done.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's good that it's in writing that the neighbor has confirmed that he understands what's happening, and that was our concern.
Yeah, that seemed like the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, which is like, well, it seems like it's our duty to make sure that he understands the impact, potential impact, and if he's okay with it, that's all we can do.
Yeah, so I think I did send the letter to DES just informing them of that we had reviewed and declined to approve it. Is that something, I guess, on all of our wetlands permits now, I think we should send a letter on to DES and just informing them if we have I mean, I guess if we've signed off on it, it means that we have reviewed it. But I know that there have been permits that have gone through that without our signature that have come back. So just as part of our process, that we will notify DES of what we're doing, so.
Yeah, I think that's good.
It was the only thing that we had for that. I just have added kind of a new agenda item for Dundee Community Forest. Just, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of action on that. Short term, I think, because the management committee will be meeting quarterly.
One thing that I was thinking about when we were at that meeting is they had talked about just kind of the role of the management committee, and they said, oh, well, you know, he said a couple times talking about, like, you know, we have the, you know, if a proposal comes up, whatever, you know, you go back to your constituency and, you know, just you make, you know, and you know, disseminate that information so that, you know, your interests are represented or whatever. And so I was just kind of wondering, because he said a couple times, like, is there anything we need to do? Or, I mean, there's already a Jackson selectman that's on the management committee, or in the management group, right? So, like, I guess my question is, if there's a proposal that's up, do we need to, is just talking about it at this table, like, is that good enough for our constituency and, you know, our voice to be heard? Or just there need to be a different step? And so I guess I didn't know. I think if there's a selectman, then that kind of seems like that's their avenue for telling the town, like, this thing is happening. So is there anything that we need to do other than, like if Ben and I come back and we're like, hey, they're going to do this thing, but making sure this commission knows. Does this make sense? You know
No,
what
I
I'm
hear
saying?
what you're
Yeah.
communicating. I mean, I think initially I would say yes, but I don't
Well, when I was a selectman, I felt I could make decisions because I have been put in that position by the constituency, but to use my best judgment, you know, and that as long as you don't have an agenda or you're not trying to make personal profit, but, you know, to just try to make a good decision, I make it on the spot.
The distinction is that you were elected, we're just appointed,
Yeah.
so.
So maybe we just need to like come back here and just say, hey, there's this proposal, do we have the board's consensus for this kind of thing? I don't know, I was just,
And we put it in our minutes.
Well,
Yeah.
who's gonna represent the board, this board?
I am.
You are.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be Tim Mountain?
I'm there for Tin Mountain, yeah.
And we figured Ken will be,
I actually don't know if Ken is there for ski touring or if it's gonna be Ellen.
Ellen will be representing ski touring. Peter Benson is representing the select board.
okay.
I guess it was my understanding that the management committee makes recommendations to the land trust's executive board. And
Yeah.
they're the people making the final decisions. So we're
Yes.
just offering input. Like, we're not.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I just, I guess I don't know, I guess maybe it doesn't matter. I didn't know if we needed to involve like,
Well, I guess if it was something really
if it was a big
important.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Right, if something for a vote came up, but I would think at a board meeting, as you discussed it amongst, what, 15 people,
Yeah.
that you'll come to some kind of consensus on the spot. I mean, and that would be the recommendation. Where it goes from there is up to upper.
Land trust and their board and their, their
Yeah.
departments, yeah.
So then maybe the better question is, and I don't want to create more work for anyone, should we have some sort of, not a strategic plan, but a kind of common vision of what we think? So that way, like when Ben goes, he knows like, oh, like we're kind of like, this is kind of what the Jackson Conservation Commission is kind of hoping this thing looks like, so, I don't know.
I mean, you're kind of coming up saying what I was thinking, it's only, but almost in reverse. I guess it could be strange if, for some reason, Ben decides to make a decision that's based upon the feelings of the Conservation Commission. It comes up, and then we realize, like, well, we don't actually support that.
Yeah.
But like, would that happen?
Right.
You know, like, is there a point where someone comes back and goes, oh, look, the Conservation Commission supported it, and it's like, no, we didn't.
Yeah, well, even, yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I just don't, like,
When would that,
I think there's only a couple of things. Like I was thinking, like some of the bigger, like camping, or like some of the different recreational uses, or things like.
yeah,
There's some that I was like, I don't know. There might be a difference of opinion on the, within the Conservation Commission. I don't know. I'm not trying to like
no,
kick a nest or anything. I just when they said that, I was like, oh, how do we make sure that we're all kind of on the same? I mean, I think we are.
I mean, what if you want to
But-
move hunting to Sundays, like they do in Maine, in the community forest? Like,
Yeah.
Something like that.
So I don't know.
well,
Something
I think the concern is if something comes up and it becomes contentious. Yeah, how do we decide like, when would it really get thrown out to us? But in theory, someone could then turn and say, well, look, you guys supported this.
right.
I don't say that to put any pressure on Ben or to say that we couldn't trust your judgment, because obviously I feel like who can. But
Well, do they have any just resident positions on the board, management board, so they're not usually on a
They
board?
talked about that.
So Peter had made that suggestion that there would be an at-large member of the committee. And Mike Moran is the kind of coordinator for the land trust. They did not particularly like that idea, that there was a lot of, I think, there were a lot of interests
Is that gonna be
represented.
wild
Well, just that there were a lot of disparate interests already represented that had attached constituencies, so rather than just having a random opinion that
Mhm.
is essentially just one person's, could essentially just be one viewpoint,
card?
but they were considering that, so that hasn't been added.
It could also be the viewpoint of somebody with an agenda based upon the person who's selected.
Mhm.
If it's
Supporting
only
your-
a meeting every 3 months.
I think I just came to the same conclusion you did. I just at the same time, yes, yes.
But if they put out an agenda a month ahead of time,
Yeah,
what we're gonna do, then we would have a chance to discuss it. And then whatever representative could go in with a,
yeah.
pretty good mandate for,
Right,
vote.
comfort that he's supported or not
Yeah,
supported.
Because we'll meet 2 or 3 times every time before they meet.
So is it gonna be a noticed meeting where people, members of the public can come and listen or ask questions or?
I
is it
think the
closed door?
problem with the opening it to the public, it becomes so tedious.
Mm,
I mean, you don't get anything done.
I don't believe they're open to the public.
okay.
I think that it's more like a work session,
Just asking.
Yeah.
where, yeah, you can come in and listen, but we're not looking for input. We just we wanna talk
Mhm.
and see what we can get done.
Yeah,
So I think to answer my initial question, my guess has been by putting this just on the agenda, that's probably accomplishing what I'm looking for. Right? So just as long as it's a standing thing. So that way, we get to that point and it's either like, hey, this thing's happening, what do you guys think? Or it's, nothing's really happening.
And our agenda's noticed, and so people, if they have any questions about the Dundee Forest, they can come
Oh, right, yeah.
here.
And then, you're right, and there's the, if someone feels like they need, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll just go quickly over kind of the discussion. One of the main points that came up, which is kind of a deviation from their management plan that they have with the state, is that they've been talking with the Randolph Community Forest and how they generate revenue there through maple sugaring. And they were discussing that the Doublehead plot would be ideal for doing maple sugaring on as a way of generating funds to sustain the management of it. But that would need to go back to the state because the state has already finalized the conservation easements and the management plan. So there was discussion on amending that, as having that be an allowable use on.
That is an agricultural use,
yeah, it seems that it's,
and that I think is in the management plan.
I think,
certain sections of it though, maybe.
How much money can you make for maple sugar?
Well, that's, yeah, I didn't want to get into that.
well, I think it's the lease of the, it's not like the revenue they make from making maple syrup, it's just the lease of the land, right?
I think that was it. It was
So they wouldn't actually. do
leasing it to a
Yeah,
operation.
it'd be,
Per tap.
Okay.
Yeah, you get like 50 cents a tap, or, maybe up to $1 a tap. Going is, but there is a protocol.
And there was also currently under review, and they did not provide the draft of the MOA that went out to the towns, but the main gist that I got from that was that they want to make sure that the properties are considered as a whole rather than discrete tracts belonging to the individual towns, so they'll be managed as one unit rather than the Bartlett's responsibility ones and Jackson's.
I don't know if I like that.
There was also in some of the special management areas in the wetlands area on the Tin Mountain Tract that we talked to Rick Vanderpool about when they were doing the trout restoration. When he prepared the plan, this was not in the works, and because it was implemented as a special management area, a wet or a riparian area that limited cutting there, which kind of put the kibosh on his plan that
Oh,
to add any debris into the.
Oh, they can't do that then?
They
well,
can.
They're gonna seek an exemption, I think that's like the first thing
Yeah.
that he's gonna, like the first order of business at the next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So amending that with the state, which they seemed confident about. So looking at the Doublehead Tract, which has far fewer restrictions placed on it in terms of management areas, that has the most potential for recreational development, especially since there's a parking lot there already. But they have not provided any maps of what that would entail, but the property boundary brushes up against the Doublehead ski trail, so it would most likely be opening up graded ski access off towards the Windy Hill farm side. Is one of the first things that would happen. And ski touring was not there, so I know that they have expressed interest in having things there, but that did not come up.
Did they ever discuss just leaving it alone, let it be backcountry skiing, you know?
There was, Rick Vanderpool, who did the surveys, did talk about that a little bit. Like he highlighted the bear trails. So there was some mention of that within like the kind of different recreation uses and whatever. There was a mention of like, there might be some sections that we just don't do anything.
Yeah, so the Tin Mountain Tract, which had,
Old growth.
yeah, so the ridgetop old growth so that seems kind of like the most kind of prized piece for being very unique, encompassing a lot of very unique habitats that were distinct and unique for this particular area of New Hampshire. That there was riparian winter and moose habitat there that just does not occur anywhere else in the state there. And so his looking at things is that the Doublehead Tract, because it had been previously thoroughly logged through there, that there doesn't exist that same sort of old growth animal habitat and tree habitat, of setting that aside and having kind of looking at the Doublehead Tract for the maple sugaring or recreation. There's also kind of a discussion about the timber economics of carbon credit versus forestry management cutting. And there's currently I can't remember if this was near at the Balsams or near that, but there is a case going through about having conservation easement lands being locked up for carbon credits versus being managed for timber practices.
Yeah.
And the state would like things to be actively logged as a
Revenue generating tax.
revenue generating economic base, timber economies in
I
the
would
North
think the
Country.
conservation easements would be pretty minimal in comparison to commercial tracts, one would think. What do I know?
Well, I think because that's a really good question in looking about what do we mean by conservation and maintaining old growth forest as old growth forest seems like a very good idea, but places that have been historically logged or in the past have been logged and that can be managed for forest products for two different kind of things. And he was talking about like the bear trails that Mike just mentioned. He said you can measure the impact of a trail and kind of get the amount of time that the trail had been there, and the depression that he measured along the Bear Pass, he estimated that those paths had been there for at least 150 years. So it's a very unique habitat there. So I think,
So you want to cut their trees down?
right, or just minimize. That's one of the impacts of recreation,
Right.
is that
disturbs that.
Yeah.
Flow.
I thought it was interesting because they said, they talked about like, well, which is the right idea to treat it all as one, it's not like, oh, Jackson takes care of the Jackson side, Bartlett takes care of the Bartlett side. Talking about it being one, one plan. But what I thought was really interesting is they said, but there are these 3 separate tracks, and so we can kind of look at them if we want to, is then like this, maybe this one is more the recreation track, this one is the demonstration forest, this one is the one that we don't
We will.
do anything on. And I thought that was an interesting
Yeah.
way to look at it, to kind of think about how, we're going to have all these mixed uses, but maybe they don't have to all be on the same
Right.
piece of property. You can have mixed uses that are spread out amongst the 1,000 acres on these different parcels.
I remember that being a topic in that preliminary meeting that was at the outside the Whitney Center. There was like the concept of, because they are separate, you can isolate.
Yeah.
So like kind of the idea of maintaining the spirit and character of the area.
Mhm.
So, we did not get into it, but I think we've discussed this in other venues about multi-use trails. And I don't know, since there hasn't been anything specifically proposed other than like graded skiing, which is kind of a very specific purpose. I just very much want to be on the record, like this is my personal opinion that I will be taking into the meeting, is that I very much want to avoid a Whitaker Woods situation as much as possible. And that understanding that multi-use is really multi-use, that
What's the use of Whitaker Woods?
so that in the
Bikes, e-bikes, stuff like that?
in the wintertime, there's a series of looped trails that get groomed for skiing that have been set aside exclusively for skiing, and there have been walkers who have objected to that, and there have been angry confrontations between skiers and walkers, and skiers believe that since they have maintained the space for skiing, that it's exclusively for their use, and the walkers like walking on the groomed snow because it's easier to walk on than ungroomed snow.
Yeah.
All fine and good, and I see the argument, but there are not a lot of places to walk in the wintertime here that is not on a road or alongside a road. And everyone deserves to have recreational opportunities and year-round, and getting shut out by people who seek confrontation as an exclusive use. I just don't think that drives anything, and that kind of against the spirit of a community resource.
Well, but again, you could also say that there could be a maintained surface for the walkers.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of like if you're paying to ski some places, you bought a pass so you can ski and people can walk on it for free. It's kind of weird.
Right, so Jackson maintains 120 something kilometers of exclusive ski touring. I don't feel like there is a lack of that option in Jackson, and there's not a lot of options for winter walking.
Mm.
And I can understand sort of like special use, like it makes more sense like thinking about graded backcountry skiing or like kind of dedicated mountain bike trails. But if there's going to be sort of a common feeder network trail system that kind of accesses all of those different resources, I feel like kind of the backbone should be open to everyone.
Well, I mean, I guess you could look at it like, what is a hiking trail? Hiking trail is something you could ski on. You can walk on it too.
Yeah.
Skiers get upset when walkers
Edge
walk on,
trails.
like the Doublehead Ski Trail is a perfect example of it. It's a ski trail that people walk on. But you can't tell a walker not to walk on it because it's
very hard
It's
to
just a
ski
trail.
on some of the narrow skis.
I think it just gets tricky if you're setting up something as a quote-unquote ski trail, and then the ability to ski it is taken away because it gets walked on. That's a confusing, it's like,
Yeah,
how
also,
do you do that?
there's also the liability issue if you've got a trail that then people, like if they post hole in it and
Right.
your ski goes into a post hole and so there's like,
Yeah.
they kind of have like liability thing too.
Bring it up at the first meeting to discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, the simple solution, which isn't simple, is you say, well, there's a walking path that's maintained. Please walk on it and don't ski on the walking path. It's like, well, then what are you doing? You're making trails next to trails so that.
Or you make the trails so that they're difficult to ski on. They're just walking trails.
Right. Well, if you're making a trail that's not really skiable, then you typically don't find skiers on it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for walking, hiking, running, anything in the winter. I don't say it because I do it. I run, hike, snowshoe, whatever, ski, do all of them. And I try to be thoughtful of what's going to affect the trail so that maybe if I can't walk it, if I walk it when it's soft, or you can't ski it if you walk it when it's soft. So you have to be thoughtful. But the idea of seeing a place like Whitaker Woods that someone just drove a $100,000 machine on to groom a skate track and before someone skis on it, a group of people could walk down the middle of it seems ridiculous to me.
So they have, I wasn't aware that they had like a piston bully. I thought they were just snowshoes.
Well, they have a high-tech grooming machine. I mean, you
Yeah.
do state meets and stuff there.
Yeah, it's the Whitaker Woods is the high school
Yeah.
home Nordic
I mean,
course.
you see it oftentimes. I mean, I just left a track with 2 ski tracks back 4 or 5 times, and someone decided instead there's only 6 inches of snow. You could just walk to the left or right of it.
Right.
But instead, you walk right on top of someone's ski track because it was easier for them, which is, I get it.
I
You
think
would think that a light would go off like, oh, someone is using this for a purpose. I could just step off to the side of it, and if I'm going to walk this consistently, I'll just walk next to it and make my own walking path next to his ski path, not use his ski path as my walking path, and then I move over, they have to find a new. It's just that kind of concept. People don't think about it, so for those of us who do, it seems, oh, it's common sense. You would just, that's not what people do. So then you get the conflict.
Right. Right. Which is why I'm thinking about sort of like, not maybe like a hub and spoke model, I'm just thinking about resources that I had growing up, which, Utah is a winter recreation capital, and I feel like the people here would lose their minds to see the things that we would ski on, which were the idea of something that wasn't post-hold in my mind was like, well, yeah, of course it is. That's the only road you can go on.
Right, that's for everybody. That's
Yeah.
everybody's.
But it wasn't being groomed.
Like, I never skied on groomed cross-country skiing until I moved here. And cross-country skiing just meant going around and kicking around a field or something, or along a road, and you encountered whatever you encountered, and
But you could break that down into everything. You could say, like, biking could be the same way. Oh, I never needed to be on a real trail. It's like, well, you're riding, that's what you consider biking, but no, they're riding
But
this
see,
type of
you're
bike.
going from amateur skiing to a business, and ski touring is a business. They charge money to make money. They get to spend it all. They don't have it's not a corporation. It's a, what is it, 301?
Yeah.
And it is a corporation, but
But-
profit, yeah.
But they're out there to make money. Now, if you leave that alone and go back to, yeah, we can get along, but there's no one grooming it.
Right.
I'd go out and snowshoe it first and then ski it after that. But that would be, that would be, if it was left alone.
Right, but I guess it's, that gets into the, as a cart and horse situation, which is, if you give the business the opportunity to run their business on a thing versus this is gonna be used for community.
Well, here's another, I don't know the answer to this, and I'm not saying it because it's like a leading question either, but what happens at Maple Villa if that was the spot that people felt was the safest place to go walking, and the access to the skiing suddenly became like, well, there's no place to walk in my neighborhood, so we all come to Maple Villa and just walk up the access road, access to the ski trails, and that's our walking path because we're not breaking trail anymore. I mean, it's the same idea. Suddenly, if it's just covered with foot traffic between snowstorms, people are going to start freaking out, going like, "Hey, I thought we're here to go skiing." It doesn't mean you can't walk on it. Like the conversation is going to happen when it turns out that the skiing is dangerous because people just walk it now.
Well, I mean, Doublehead is that example.
Right, so I know, but it's not there's no true intent, like, it's an everything mountain, right? I mean, people go there to go hiking more than they go there to go skiing. Skiing is, less than a fifth of the traffic that it gets. You get the 3 seasons when there is no snow.
Right, yeah.
And then there's the season there is snow, and then there's just a small proportion of people who actually ski it in the winter. There's all the people that run it, hike it, snowshoe it, have no idea what they're doing, turn around people. And then there's the skiers. But like Maple Villa was set up to ski. But is there a situation where they can tell people, hey, you can't walk on this? Like, we made this for skiing. That's my question. I don't know that answer.
I think for me, with the Dundee Forest, it'll probably come down to whether it's, is it like a multi-use winter trail that's, maintained by the land trust, and then in my mind, then it's like, like the ski trails in the Great Gulf or whatever. It's like, yeah, there's post holes, there's snowshoe marks, there's whatever it is we're going. Or is it like special use permit kind of thing, a groom trail that's maintained by ski touring? Then if it's that kind of thing, then that's when I'm like, well, no, it should just kind of probably be skiers on those trails.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, in my mind, that's how I would differentiate it. Like, is this part of like the Jackson ski touring resort trails, for lack of a better word, or are these just kind of multi-use trails that are just winter trails? Like, what's the Namakumchuk one?
Namakum.
Yeah. Like that one, like if you ski that one, it's like, it's rocks everywhere and people walking and post holing everywhere. But
park.
yeah, but that's just kind of like, I like it. It's just
cool.
It's cool. It's awesome. But that's not. But I have that expectation versus like if that were to happen, if I were on, if I paid $25 and went to go ski the wave and it was like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be different.
I think the example of the Great Gulf stuff is perfect. I mean, I guess that in my mind, that's what I expected these trails we were talking about, and maybe the only reason I went to the other mindset of it is because Jackson Ski Tour came up when you were bringing it up, but they had, so I was like, oh wait, we're talking about there's actually like an expansion of the trail system up there.
Right.
It's like,
That's
whoa,
it. Would they start
that's getting
charging?
confusing.
Yeah.
So would you need a ticket to ski those trails? And it's like last week up at Prospect Farm, there was a ticket checker up there on Prospect Farm. I guess my wife and her friend looked right, and they didn't have to produce tickets. But these are Jackson residents. We're supposed to be able to use the Prospect Farm trails without a ski touring ticket.
Mhm.
And that's what, I don't want that to, ski touring to fall over into the Dundee Forest. Because I believe that it should be, and it should be Bartlett and Jackson, because we're gonna look at this as a whole thing.
Mm.
So we're not gonna say, okay, this is in Jackson, so Bartlett can't come in here for nothing.
Mm.
Well, yes, they can, because that's what this whole thing is.
Yeah, it's good.
So, it's gonna be, I think, a long discussion or, you know, maybe heated discussion, but I think it should be worked out, and I think it should be, you know, for the common good.
Yeah. I
If
guess
we
I
get
do.
to that, I think it would be the best.
Nice if those operate like Tin Mountain, where things are consistent, you know, so when you cross over a boundary, it's the same type of use, which is pretty much hiking and snowshoeing.
Yeah, we have to see, because they're gonna connect, or the idea is to connect some of the trails in, so
Yeah, I
that's
can
something
see
that we'll
Yeah.
have to talk a little bit about. Tin Mountain has talked a little bit about like what kind of permitted uses, because there might be some permitted uses in the Dundee Forest that are,
Right.
well, there will be permitted uses in the Dundee Forest that we know won't happen on
Right.
Tin Mountain.
That's exactly it.
So,
And I guess maybe a conversation with, as you said, ski touring didn't propose what they maybe had envisioned.
yeah,
Maybe
I
it's that it's hard to picture what they would really benefit from in that.
well, the only thing I could see them being interested in is that they're higher elevation trails.
Yeah.
You know, as years go by and there's less snow down here in the village, I could see
Yeah.
them being excited about being 1,000 feet up and having another area to,
Right. Getting over from Windy Hill somehow, or
yeah, connecting these pastures. No, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I could see that as like a connector, but like an actual loop type thing. I wouldn't really see that.
Yeah.
Maybe another access point. But yeah.
And I do want to recognize your point, Ben. I do hear what you're saying about just honoring different recreation types and making sure everyone has, like a seat at the table kind of thing. Like I hear you when you're like, they got 120 kilometers. Like, how many places can you just go for a snowshoe or an easy walk?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Well, it's almost like the sense of when you see a snowshoe corridor that's in a Nordic area, like, that's wonderful. Like, can't there be a walking element to that?
Yeah.
You know, like we were in Bozeman, and there's a place called Cutthroat or Shortcut. It's quite an amazing Nordic center, pretty far out as a biathlon course and everything. But they have these multi-use. So you have the fully groomed areas, piston fully areas, but then there's these more like straight shots that cut through that are narrower. Maybe they're 5 feet wide, and people are fat biking, hiking, backcountry skiing. So it's more of a direct route to these other places. And so they just cut through. It's still a maintained corridor, but it's not fully attached to the skate lanes. And they cross over and they might share a little bit, but there's people that are just going through, doing everything you'd want to do, but you're not impacting the skiing, you're not impacting the groomer. And it seems like there's a really good overlap of people, and people acknowledge each other. And it's like, oh, I want to go do that, that's cool, that's a quick way to get to this other place, and you don't have to put your skis on, you know? So again, it's like you want to cookie cutter everything and have trails that everywhere, but at some point, I don't think it's a bad idea to create a space for them, because you want to go walking. Like, I don't always want to go skiing, I want to go for a walk, I don't want to walk on the road. And you're right, like you can't go to Prospect, but it would be nice if there's a shoulder of Prospect, you could just, it's bulletproof,
Right.
I just want to go walking.
That's why Tin Mountain's so nice, because you can just walk and you can just snowshoe. It's
Yeah.
really nice.
But that's what every hiking trail is effectively in the White Mountains. It's a
But it's
place.
accessible.
No, I know, I'm just saying, but it's, again,
Yeah.
it's something that you have to snowshoe it to make it walkable when there's snow. You know, it's not
Not good.
a flat surface that's just like, hey,
Right.
my grandmother could go walk on this, and when it's firm, because it's just that. You know, because we have taken away most of the, like if you go to the end of Green Hill Road, that's a nice place to go for a walk, except it's a ski trail. So as soon as you park at the gate, you're not able to walk. But that's, you can do the list of the flat, easy places to walk around here. They're groomed. So I kind of can see where you're driving, went to the Rocky Branch to go for Jericho Road to go for a walk, because it's the road that isn't groomed.
Be interested, because of, well, anyways. Yeah, Yes. So I think there'll probably be a lot of discussion on this, and I did not get a copy of the MOA, and so I'd be interested to hear what they're proposing to the select boards of what the town is signing on to with letting Land Trust manage this, or I guess I would just like to know what they're signing into, because that's kind of how ski touring is said, well, we've signed this agreement that allows us this use, and I'm like, well, if I could throw in a caveat that, you know, walkers are allowed on Wednesdays or something. I don't know. I think getting into too many rules creates conflicts, but.
Now's the time to talk about it then.
And I feel like this is exclusively and explicitly a winter issue, because you don't come up with these things in the summertime. People can
Right.
just.
Well, but they have mountain biking, and that's probably gonna be a thing. That's probably gonna be, like with Dundee Forest, that'll probably also be another,
Right, it
I could
is.
see that being a contentious thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And really
Especially
damage
with
all the
mountain biking,
trails.
the term mountain biking almost needs to be broken into like 3 different mountain biking types now too. There's
Right.
people who go with the traditional sense of mountain biking, which is just riding your bike that can go off-road, and then there's literally bringing your bike up a mountain so you can just ride down it.
Right.
And then there's all mountain riding, which is a combination of kind of everything. So
And
it's
then
complicated.
it can be incompatible with hiking,
Absolutely.
because if you're coming down,
Yeah.
probably you can stop eventually,
Yeah.
and somebody's coming up, I can see some tight
Yeah,
situations.
and even, I think there's probably less actual conflict where people actually hit each other or strike each other. It's more just what that looks like and feels like. It's just not a good experience.
Right, and
As a
somebody's
mountain
got a
biker,
dog
you
and,
feel
you know,
like this is wrong, and as the hiker, they might be completely upset that this machine's destroying my trail. This
Right.
bike's ruining my trail, which you could go, could be looked upon, but it's just, it doesn't, there has to be a rule that's set so people understand, I'm allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed to do this, and you do have the right to look at me like that. And just be like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be here. Because right now, it's a slippery spot that people appear to be respecting less and less. The trails are getting ridden more and more.
Right. And because there are unique habitats there that should be preserved in a way that very limits human use. That is a hard concept for me to get used to, but really is at the concept of wilderness,
Right.
which is, you shouldn't go there.
Right.
Leave it alone.
Yeah,
Not everything is for you.
wildness.
Yeah, which I feel like has a strong. There are a lot of people in the community who feel like that. So
Yeah. Well, which is part of the problem of then showing an area as wilderness.
yeah,
Why is it wild? That's where all the big trees are and all the animals are. Oh.
Let's go check it out.
okay. Well, I think that will continue to be a big topic that we can continue discussing. I think I am going to try to get the language of that MOA just so we can have that to review. And if we want to, since we're not signatories on it, but if we want to make any suggestions to the select board.
Is that with the towns and the land trust?
Okay. The Saco Swift Local Advisory Council, anyways, they still need a representative, and I do not want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, really?
You can't do another one then.
You've got my vote.
Yeah. we'll support you if you want to do it. And what's the how many meetings? Like, what's the
Yeah, it's a quarterly, one meeting a quarter, and
who's the head?
I think Mark Dinsdorf is the head, but I think that might have just changed because I got a different message from someone. But I think that I had asked nicely several times if Jackson would like to have.
Who's not here that we volunteered?
Tom?
Tom? No, we can't do Tom. He's got kids. Can you send me a little bit of info on
Sure.
that, and
Yeah.
I'll read into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Just make sure.
Okay. And someone brought to my attention a question about logging that the New Hampshire Forest Foundation is doing on Dundee Road, which is a scenic road, or a New Hampshire scenic road that has a statute governing the uses of that. And it's fairly broad, but there's a very specific language that if there's going to be any disturbance of old stone walls, that the town select board or the planning board needs to be notified in writing that that is going to happen. I've not found out if they have done that yet, because I remember when the notification for this came up to us, but there was no information in that of what their plan was. And I haven't gotten a hold of Bill Terry yet, but that's on my list.
I thought there was also the percentage of the trees that could be cut alongside, because like the Iron Mountain Road is also scenic, and you know, I lived up on that for as many years as we did. Like, I'm pretty sure we couldn't cut the trees that were on the side edge of the road within a certain distance.
Well, I didn't dive into all of the RSAs on that, other than that the planning board is the board who would be dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was any variations or but so the thing that came up was the disturbance of stone walls, and then not a very good visual buffer as to work that was occurring. And if there's a remediation plan in place. I think that's the main question I would have for Bill if that came up.
And are they just logging, or is it for a particular purpose? Do we know?
It's selective logging and clear cuts.
I mean, are they putting the subdivision in, or just trying to remember what I read?
It's not Foster. That's not part of the Foster land.
Well, it was, but it's in a conservation easement to NEFF, New England Forestry Foundation.
Through the Foster. Okay.
So
That's interesting.
I'm not sure, I didn't look at it. I don't think they left a buffer, but in many places, it probably is good enough.
Yeah.
There's a couple I think they took too much, but I don't know if it's a mandate or if it's a best practice suggestion. You know, that you should do this, but I think the stone walls are a state mandate. I think that I do know that years ago, up the road, the town did some ditching, of course, and impacted a stone wall that was there. Okay, it's an old stone wall that's, all grown in around it, but it was a stone wall. And they had to reconstitute it. The road crew had to go up and rebuild this section of stone wall that they impacted. And I think that is a state mandate. As far as the buffer, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't find that language in the general statute without getting into all the subsections. But yes, the stone walls were very explicit that
Yeah.
they should not be disturbed.
Hey, they're talking about out in the middle of the woods. I mean, it can be 2 miles in if there's an old homestead back there and that's. If you have to impact it, you do, but if that's the best route for you, but then you have to put it back together.
Okay. Well, I tried to find that in the planning board minutes, and I couldn't find it, but I will follow that up with Bill Terry to see if he has any information on that. Or if they have that as a process that comes through frequently, because we get notified that logging is occurring, but that's the only information we ever get, so.
Right. They've got an intent to cut.
Right. So I'll follow up with that. And that's all I had on that. Anything else from anyone?
No, it was good. Thanks for that good information on the W4s.
Thanks for
Mm.
that.
Very.
It really is the best thing that could have happened to the land, I think. I think of all the options, that's a pretty good option that it became community forest run by the land trust.
Well, and I guess that just also reminded me, is a thing when they were talking about when things go into this land trust, it spurs abutters into action. So there is a parcel at the top of Dundee that just got noticed for putting in a subdivision.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that when we closed the meeting and got off camera. I wanted some details on that. We don't do anything.
I don't have any other information. I think that comes up at the next planning board meeting, so.
Gotcha. I was curious about that.
Is that again?
Seems like a lot of
The
lots.
Pricklewitz,
Pietkowitz.
Pietkowitz, you know, they built our house, but, their lot, that they're planning on putting in, or applying for a subdivision, but the line item in the agenda didn't have any other information, so not sure how large. But that is coming up, so.
I think it's, I don't know how many, couple acres for one house.
Okay.
There's John would like to sell his house, which is now too big for he and his wife, and build a smaller, John doesn't do small,
Yeah.
smaller house for he and his wife. And that should be, it should be okay,
Yeah.
because he'll have road frontage.
Yeah.
The house he sells will have road frontage, and I don't think anything else can happen there.
You'd be sharing that same driveway?
I don't know if
Right,
they
'cause you
can,
could-
what, say, the
could do
planning
two.
board meeting to see the plot, but it sounded pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't, he's not trying to do
Right.
a 6 or 8
Right,
house
a multi.
subdivision. No.
Yeah, that word's difficult. Subdivision sounds worst case scenario. Oftentimes I didn't realize that someone had one and they made two.
And
But
I don't know, but we may get some money out of the current use property coming out. Do you know Mac Beal's Red House on Dundee Road? Let's see, as you come down from the Doublehead Trail, on your right is a old red, let's see, there's a garage that was turned into a
Bama's place.
house,
Yeah.
the red house, and then the field in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that that field was in current use,
Mm.
and I think Larry bought a house lot worth there. So whatever, I don't know, I think we would get 10% of the
It's 50%.
current assessment back.
That was
We get half of that,
Yeah.
5%
5%.
for the conservation
Okay.
commission.
Oh, yeah, we'd get half of that.
Yeah.
Right, half of the 10%.
Yeah, half, 10% is 5%.
My God.
I should go back to school.
Multiplied by 2.
I think I could do well this time.
Yeah. Never too late.
So we
Reading books at night.
read every night, but
All right.
not school books.
Yeah. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second, all in favor?
Hey.
Opposed?
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, thank you.